Presentation on how to use Primavera P6. This is a follow-up to our last presentation where we did introduction to Primavera P6. I really want to thank everybody who watched or saw that particular video, and then also while reading the comment I saw that a whole lot of you were actually excited about the video, and some of you couldn't wait for us to do this version 2 of that same video. So we're going to be continuing from where we stopped the last time. Remember, in the previous video which I did, we basically did introduction to Primavera P6 where we understood everything about the interface from the menu up until the specific buttons, including the directory bar and the command bar, as well as the toolbar. So today we shall be looking at how to create a simple plan using Primavera P6. Yes, creating a simple plan. Usually I tell people that the best plan you can actually have is a very simple plan. In other words, keep it simple, because the simpler your plan, the better it can get, and then also the more useful it can be to anybody who wants to use that information. So we log into our Primavera P6 as usual by entering our password, and then it takes us right in. Okay, so the very first page that is displayed here is the project page. You're going to see it at the very top, level of your Primavera P6, and we shall learn how to create a new project. And beyond learning how to create a new project, we shall also learn how to set up the backstage view of our Primavera P6. So usually part of the very first things I like to do is to set up the backstage view. I like to change the currency, just in case the default currency is not your native currency. There are different ways that you can do that. So part of the ways we can change our currency is by going to the admin menu. So you click on admin. Now when you click on admin, you will see currencies there, and then you click on currencies. When you click on currencies, you will see the available currencies that you have in the Primavera P6, from the US dollar to the pound sterling to the Japanese yen. So you can actually look for the base currency which you're working on and select that very currency, and that's exactly what you need to do. But let's say, for example, we have a situation where the currency you are working on does not exist, because sometimes you may discover that your country's currency is not in Primavera P6. I'm from Nigeria, and in Nigeria we use the Nigerian Naira. Unfortunately, this is not captured here, so I may just need to add the Nigerian Naira. So to add another currency which may not be captured as part of the default or part of the default currencies or the display currencies in Primavera P6, all we simply need to do is we click on the add button on the currency window that shows up. So the moment you click on the add button, you will notice that it creates a space for you to enter new currency. So here I type in my new currency, which is the Nigerian Naira, and aside from that, I go to the currency ID. I also change it to Nigerian currency ID, which is NGN, and for the currency symbol, well, I'm also going to leave it at NGN. Now, if you look at the other end, you're going to see the next column is exchange rate. So the exchange rate helps you in currency conversion. Say, for example, you got an estimate in Primavera P6 stated in US dollar, and you want to see the Nigerian value for that amount of money, and that's what the exchange rate here serves for. So at the moment, exchange rate in Nigeria is about 360 Naira per dollar, and that's the exchange rate. So that's essentially what I've entered here. And usually it's also necessary you ensure that your decimal symbol is showing, so that that can distinguish when you have other sub currencies. Say, for example, you have the cents, or you have what we refer to as kobo here in Nigeria, or whatever lower denomination of your currencies. Then I like using two decimal places, so that if, for example, I have 150 naira, it will show 100.50. So that's what the number of decimal places will help us to do. Then also grouping digits, or rather digit grouping symbol, is the comma. So that helps us to distinguish, especially when we have very large amount of money. So the comma comes in handy. That will help us to, be able to distinguish that. So the moment you've created your native currency or your country's currency, remember, it's either you create one or you select one. Once you're done with that, you click on close. So we have created the currency. Now, the next thing we need to do is to display the currency. Note that creating the currency is different from displaying the currency. Displaying the currency would mean that in the course of our scheduling, when we display the cost column or anything that has to do with cost, instead of it showing in the default currency, maybe US dollar, then it can show in whatever currency that you want it to display, including the new currency that you may have created. So to display your currency, you click on the edit menu, and from the edit menu, you click on user preferences, which is the last option there. So when you click on user preferences, the user preferences window appears. Now, under the user preferences window, there is a currency part of it. Currency is just underneath date. Remember, the first one is times and unit, the second one is date, and the third is currency. So when you click on currency, of course, as expected, the default currency here is the US dollar, and I would want to change the US dollar to my country's currency, which in this case is the Nigerian naira. So I select the Nigerian naira, which I just created in the last exercise. And once I click on it, I click on the select button. That is this button that looks like a plus button, green in color. That's the select button. So the moment you do that, you can see that the currency changes to Nigerian naira. So my currency symbol now will be NGN, and then it will also show decimal digits, which is what is displayed at this point. So once I'm done with that, I click on close, and that means I have created a new currency. I have also displayed the new currency that I just created. Next, we shall learn how to create a new project. Primavera P6 gives us different options or different ways we can create a new project. Remember, this is just a simple exercise. Otherwise, there are other things we may possibly want to create. For example, our EPS or our portfolio before we create the new project. But because this is just, it's simple to show us how to get running with Primavera P6 already. So we'll dive into learning how to create a new project. So if you go to the File menu and click on File, it will drop down. The very first option you have there is New. So when you click on the New, it will bring up a Create a New Project wizard. So this is a wizard that helps you to create a new project in Primavera P6. If you look at my project window, you can see that this new project I'm creating is already displaying here in the layout for projects. So it will first of all ask me to select an EPS. EPS simply means a grouping for similar projects. That's the full meaning is Enterprise Project Structure, which is what we have here. So the Enterprise Project Structure is used to group similar projects. And that's what the EPS helps us to do. So I want to leave it at all initiatives so that it's still part of all the EPSs that I have in my P6. But then if I want to change the EPS, all I simply need to do is I click on the browse button and I choose a particular EPS where I want this project to stay under. If you notice, the symbol for EPS looks like a golden pyramid. So this represents EPS. So if I want it to be under, let's say, energy EPS or manufacturing EPS, I can simply put it under any of those EPSs. But then, like I said, let's still leave it under all initiatives for the purpose of this exercise. But please, if you want to create an EPS for a start. You can do that by going to the enterprise menu. Once you click on the enterprise menu and click on EPS or enterprise project structure, all you simply need to do is you click on add, and that will enable you create an EPS. All right, so if you've selected an EPS of choice, then the next thing you do is you click on next. When you click on next, the thing that displays next is the project name. So under the project name, first you have the project ID. So let's say we're doing a manufacturing facility expansion. So we're expanding our manufacturing facility. So we can give it MFE as the project ID, and under the project name we enter the full name of our project, which in this case we said is manufacturing facility expansion. So the moment you've entered that, you click on next. The next thing you see is Primavera will ask you to select a start date for the project as well as an end date for the project. Usually it will import the date you're creating your schedule from your computer, or the date that's in your computer, and use it as the planned start date. If your project has a must finish date, for example, you have a deadline, or let's say it's a wedding project that the wedding date had already been fixed, or the wedding is slated to happen on a particular day, or say for example a sporting event that has been billed to happen on a particular day, then you may want to choose a must finish by date. Otherwise, you can leave this blank so that at the end of creation of your schedule, you are able to determine essentially when the project will finish. So from this point, you can select when the project will start. If you click on the browse button, let's say we plan to start the project. I'm creating this on first of March 2018. So let's say we plan to start this project on a later date, which is, let's say, on the 12th of March 2018. So I select 12th of March, which is the planned start date for the project, and then I click on next. It will ask for the responsible manager. Responsible manager simply refers to a portion of the organization breakdown structure that will be responsible for managing that very project. So because we are creating a simple plan, we're going to leave it at the default responsible manager, which is the enterprise. Then we click on next. Then it will ask us for assignment rate. This talks about the default rate type for new assignments. In the event we are creating, let's say, resources and we are assigning them to specific activities in our project, what rate would they use? And we're going to leave this at the default standard rate. Then we click on next. The moment you do that, you get a congratulatory message from Primavera P6 telling you congratulations that you've been able to create a new project. So once you get this congratulatory message, you can click on finish. So the moment you click on finish, you would notice that the new project we've created, which is the MFE project, that's the manufacturing facility expansion, shows up under all initiatives EPS in our Primavera P6. So that is how to create a new project. Now that we've created a new project, we shall now open the new project that we've created. There are different ways you can do that. You can simply, from your project view, right click on the new project you've created and then click on open project. Another way you can do that is you can go to file, click on open. It will bring up the open project window for you. You select the project that you want to open, which in this case is the manufacturing facility expansion project that we just created, and then you click on open. So the moment you do that, it opens up the project for you and then takes you straight to the activities page. So what we're seeing now is the activities page. Remember, all the pages that you open up in Primavera P6 is visible at the very top left corner. This is where we were before, which is the project page where we opened the MFE project from. And when we opened the MFE project, this is where we arrived. So at this point, you will notice that we have the columns at this part of our P6, and then at this other part, this is where the Gantt will appear. Then at the lower portion is what we refer to as the detail view. What happens essentially in the detail view is that it gives you a detailed description of each activity or each element that you select within your timeline. And that's what the detail view helps us to do. So now that we have opened up our project, the next thing we need to do is to create a work breakdown structure. So to create a work breakdown structure, you click on WBS in the directory bar. So when you click on WBS in the directory bar, it takes you straight to the WBS window. Well, I want to make this portion of my pieces a lot more conspicuous, so I can actually click and drag so that this is a lot more conspicuous. Okay, it looks better now. So from this window, you can see the project we've created, which is the manufacturing facility expansion, and right now we're in the WBS. So we're going to be creating a work breakdown structure for this very project. Now, the project will be done in 3 phases. So let's say we will have the very first phase, which is the building system. Then after that, the second phase, which is the automation system, and the third phase, which is the conveyor system. So these are the 3 systems we are going to be creating, or the 3 phases we are going to be creating for the purpose of this project. So there are 2 ways, or 2 major ways, or of course different ways you can create the work packages or the phases in your work breakdown structure. Let's look at the very first way we can do that. At the command bar, you're going to see a button that looks like a plus. That's the add button. So I can simply click on the add button and it creates a space for me to enter my new WBS. So on that particular space, I enter the very first phase of my project, which in this case, like I said earlier on, is building system. So the moment I enter it on that new WBS, please be mindful of the fact that I did not enter anything here. Primavera will import the project name, and because it's the very first phase, we'll also term it phase 1. That's why you're seeing MFE1. And I like it that way, so I'm going to be leaving it that way. The only place where I did an editing was in the box where we had new WBS, and then I typed in building system. So once we've done that, I can repeat the process again by clicking on the add button. But then I can also right click within this WBS window and click on add. And when I do that, it creates another portion for me titled new WBS, and under this very new WBS, I enter the work packages under the building system. So under the building system, let's say I have 3 work packages, which are the design. So I type in design there. So this is the first work package under the building system. Then I right click again and click on add. Now, because I want the next work package to be directly under the building system and not under the design work package, it's ought to be 1.2, not 1.1.1. So I would have to move it 1 step left. So if you go to the command bar, you're going to see an arrow pointing leftwards. So I select that very work breakdown structure or work package that I've created, and then I move it 1 step leftwards. You can see it turns to work package 1.2, and my second work package is procurement. So I have design, and then I have procurement. So I've created 2 work packages. Then I can add another one. Let's make it 3 by right clicking and clicking on add. And then I move it 1 step. And then I now type the next phase, which is, or rather the next work package, which is foundation. So I've created the first phase and the work packages under that very phase. If you want to see how your work breakdown structure looks in a chart, there's a chart tool in the tools bar that can help you have a closer view of what you've just created. So I could just click on the chart view, and when I click on the chart view, it shows me what I've just created. This is the project, which is the manufacturing facility expansion. This is the first phase, which is the building system. And these are the 3 work packages I have under building system, which are design, procurement, and then foundation. Okay, looks good. Now, we can go back simply by clicking on Gantt chart. In the tools bar, it takes us back to the window where we are. Now, we want to create the second phase. As usual, I can either click on the add button in the command bar, or I right click in my WBS window and click on add. Note, when I do that, it creates another new WBS for me. Because it is going to be the second phase, I move it leftwards 2 steps. Now, if you notice, it's now showing MFE4, but it should have been MFE2 because that's my second phase. So I go within where I have the WBS code and then I simply type in 2 there. That's what you need to do. And if I leave there, you can see it turns to MFE2. And the second phase is the automation system. So I have automation system. Good. So under the automation system, we're going to have the exact same work packages we had in the building system. So under automation system, I can add the first work package, which is work package 1, and that is design. And then also, I add another work package either by right clicking and clicking on add, move it 1 step leftwards to make it 2.2, and then I type in procurement because that's my second work package here, and then I also click on add again, move it 1 step leftwards, and then I type in foundation. Good. So I can create the third phase of my project by also right clicking and clicking on add. Then I move it leftwards 2 steps. To make this third phase, I simply type in 3 there. And where you have the new WBS, I type in the third phase of my project, which is conveyor system. Conveyor system. So under the conveyor system, I'm going to also create 3 work packages. So I could just add 3 spaces down there already. So the first one would be, like we had earlier on, design. And then the second one would be procurement. And then I move it 1 step left to make it the second work package under phase 3. And then the third one would be foundation. Foundation. I also need to move it 1 step leftward so that is the third work package in my WBS. So if we look at the work breakdown structure in a chart view, this is essentially what we have created. So this is our project, which is the MFE project. This is the first phase, which is the building system. This is the second phase, which is the automation system. This is the third phase, which is the conveyor system. And then under the first phase, we had our work packages, same with the second phase and same with the third phase. Please note that your project may differ, and we're using this just for, demonstration purpose. Otherwise, you may have just different work packages, but this is essentially to serve as a guide to enable us, carry out or create a simple plan. Now, aside from that, you may have a totally different layout. Note that my layout is WBS layout. Sometimes you can have a layout that would alter or may not exactly look like what I have. So you can change the layout by clicking on the layout portion, then go to layout and click on open. Now, of course, you can save the existing layout you have. So after you've saved the existing layout you have, it opens up other options for you. So you can from here choose the WBS layout, which is what we are currently using, or any other layout that you feel will serve your purpose, and then simply click on open and that particular layout would change. Good. So we have created a work breakdown structure. If we navigate back to the activities page, you will see the work breakdown structure that you've created essentially and how it appears in the activities page. All right. After we've created the work packages now, the next thing is for us to begin to add activities that you have under each of the work packages. So for the building system, we are simply going to add a few activities to the very first phase because we may not really have the time to add to all the other phases in our Primavera P6. So we select the very first one, which is the design work package. To add an activity under a work package, two ways. You can use the add button in the command bar, or you can simply right click on that very work package and click on add. If you remember, I just clicked on add, so it creates a space for me to enter the new work package. But then first, I want to show us how we can do that using the add button in the command bar. So let's click on the add button in the command bar. So when we click on the add button in the command bar, it comes up, a wizard comes up, which is the new activity wizard. So it will ask us for the activity name. I like leaving the activity ID at the default ID, so you can leave it at the default ID. Then you type in your first activity name, which is Initiate Building Design. Initiate Building Design. And then you click on Next. It will ask you, under which work package do you want this Initiate Building Design to be? Remember, we want it to appear under the Design work package. So we simply click on the Browse button and we'll select the Design work package. So you can see it comes under the Design work package. Remember, if earlier we selected the Design work package before we clicked on the add button in the command bar, it will come in there straight. But just in case you don't have it that way, you can simply click on the Browse button and then select the Design work package where you want it to be. Then you click on Next. It will ask you, what is the type of activity? Now, Primavera has different activity types, like a finish milestone, level of effort, resource dependent, then also start milestone, task dependent, and WBS summary. So we're going to make this a start milestone because this is a milestone task. So we select start milestone and then we click on next. It will ask us dependent activities if we would like to assign predecessors or successors to the activity. Well, because we've not created other activities and we may not want to create dependencies using the wizard, we simply select no. So we click on next. And then it also asks us for more details, which we're not ready to impute now. So we leave it at no and we click on next. And once we've done that, you get a congratulatory message telling you congratulations that you've created a new activity. Note, if you do not want the wizard to show up anymore, you can simply check do not show, this wizard again. Don't forget that we can also turn on this wizard if at all we want it to come up again much more later, but let's still leave it blank and then you click on finish. So we've created our first activity, which is a start milestone activity, which we termed Initiate Building Design. Now, once we've done that, another way we can create an activity is simply by right-clicking on the, on that particular work package and clicking on add. So once you do that, it creates a space for the new activity. So let's say the next activity is design building layout. So that's the next activity. Now, note that the moment you use that method, it just gives you a space to type in the activity straight. But if you look below in the detail view, you will notice that most of those things you saw in the wizard is also very visible here in the detail view. For example, the activity ID, then also the activity name, then the project, the activity type, which was where we selected start milestone, but this activity is not a milestone task, so we leave it at task dependent. Then also the duration type, and then also some other information including calendar and responsible manager and under which work package it appears. So we can simply tweak it again from our detail view as against using the wizard. So to add the next activity, we right click again and we click on add. This time around, we type in design building. So that's the third activity. That's the design building activity. And we're also going to leave it as a task dependent activity. So we've created 3 activities now, which are initiate building design, then design building layout, as well as design building. So we can also add activities under procurement. Let's say we have some activities we'll perform under procurement. We'll simply right click and we click on add. First of all, we need to plan our procurement, and then after we do that, we can also carry out procurement. In other words, buy the items we want to buy, and that's what we refer to as carry out procurement. And we can also click on add. And this is also, we have a next activity which we'll talk about inspection. That is, inspect items that were procured. And we can add another activity under procurement, which is bringing the procurement exercise to an end. And that's what we refer to as close procurement. So close procurement for us is a finish milestone. So we go to activity type and then we select finish milestone, and that activity becomes a finish milestone. If you notice, when the activity is a milestone task, you will notice that the duration for that activity changes to 0. Like in the shared building system, you can see that the duration is 0. Also, close procurement activity, which is also a milestone task, is also 0. And that's predicated on the fact that milestones have 0 durations. I mean, milestones majorly are indicators, and that's why they are called milestones. They are used to show as indicators basically about where we are at the moment with respect to the project. So Primavera might give you default durations, which in most cases is 5 days, 5 days, 5 days, 5 days. Now, if you're not seeing your Gantt, you can simply right click in the Gantt menu so that it can show you some of your Gantt that we have created. So when I right click, so you can see it shows me all of those Gantt or details that I have created thus far. But then I now want to update the duration for these activities because they are not all 5-day duration. So of course, I start initiate building system is a milestone task, so that's 0 duration. So let's say my design building layout lasts for 10 days. I type in 10 there under the duration. And then let's say the design building has a 20-day duration. I type in 20. And plan procurement is going to be done in 4 days. I type in 4. Carry out procurement, we're going to carry out procurement in, let's say, it will take us about 30 days to do the procurement exercise. Then inspection for another 5 days, so we'll leave it at that. So we have been able to add the duration for each of these activities that we have created under the original duration column. Note that as you do that, it tells you that your remaining duration is also the same thing you have because project has not started yet. And you may have a totally different set of columns, different from what I have, and there are different ways you can actually add columns, which we're going to look at right now. So if you want to add columns, say for example your original duration is not showing, or you want to add some other columns, all you simply need to do is you can right click within your Gantt and then select columns. So when you do that, Primavera displays all the columns that you can possibly add at the left, displays the ones already displayed in your timeline at the right. So if I want to add another column right now, say I want to add resource column, sometimes it might be difficult searching for each of those columns one after the other by opening up all the collapsed columns that we have, or sub columns or summary columns that we have. So I can simply go to available options and then I click on find and I type in resources and I click on find next. So when I click on find next, it shows me feedback from resources and then also other resources option, but the only thing I'm looking for is just resources. So I keep looking for resources until I get it. So this is resources. So once you have found it, you can close the find window, click on resources and click on the single arrow that shows add to list. So I click on it, it adds it to the list. Remember I told you that this list is the one already displayed on my timeline. So when I click on it, I can decide on where I want it to be. So I want my resources to appear after the remaining duration. So it's going to appear after this very column. So I click on apply. You can see resources shows up here. And then I now now click on OK. So just in case you don't have some of these columns, you can follow that particular step or procedure to add these columns that I just did. Okay, good. So we have created activities. We have also determined the durations for these activities. Next, we want to assign successors to these activities. This is where we create the dependencies. In other words, we want to show how these activities are dependent on one another. So we can do this in a series of ways. We can add a successor column. So we can simply right click, go to column, and then click on find, then type in successor. And then we click on find. So successors, that's what we're looking at for. So we select successors. We can simply double click on it, it adds. So we want our successors to appear after remaining duration. So we click on OK. So the successor window column appears here. All right. So for activity 1, which is initiate building design, the successor is design building layout. So we can simply right click, or rather double click in the cell under the successor column to display the assigned successor window. Another way we can do that is from the detail view. There's a successor tab there, so you click on the successor tab. Note, if your successor tab is not showing in the detail view, again you can display it by right clicking, then click on customize activity details, and then look for successor tab here, and then simply add. So you can also add any other item you may want to by clicking on it and clicking on the add to list button, which is this button. All right, so I click on successor in the detail view, and if you look at the left hand corner, bottom left, you're going to see an assign button. If I click on the assign button, the assign successor window also appears. Aside from doing it in this way, if you also check at your command bar, you are going to see successors there. So if I click on successors, the assign successor window also appears. So these are different ways you can display this window with which you can assign your successors. Now, of course, I usually like bringing it to the left hand corner, making it a lot more conspicuous by expanding it so that, you know, it really becomes easy for me to assign. So you will notice that what the activities or what you're seeing in the assign successor window is exactly the same set of items you're seeing, the same set of activities you're seeing in the, in your timeline. So let's say for the first activity, which is initiate building system or initiate building design, that is successor activity. In other words, it's the activity that depends on it is design building layout. So we first of all in the timeline select initiate building design, and then we come to the assign successor window and select design building layout, and then we click on the assign button. So once we click on the assign button, you will notice that in the detail view it shows you that the successor for initiate building system, now initiate building design, is design building layout. You also see display here in this cell under the successor column. Good. So by default, Primavera will create a finish to start relationship for the first relationship you are creating for that very activity. All right, let's say the second activity, which is design building layout, that is successor is design building. So we select design building layout from the timeline, then select design building from the assign successor window, and we click on the assign button. It's assigned. But then this is a start to start relationship. So we simply go to the relationships, column in the detail view, click in that box, it drops down, and we select start to start. Please note that if you make a mistake, let's say I mistakenly added another activity which I was not supposed to, I can simply select it and click on the remove button to remove the wrong assignment. So we've created two relationships now. The first one finish to start, the second one start to start. So let's say the next activity, which is design building, or rather, let's say does not have a successor. In other words, the planned procurement is not dependent on the design building. So we would not assign a successor to this. So we come to planned procurement. Planned procurement successor activity is carry out procurement and is a finish to start relationship. So we just assign. Then you select. Let's also say that the carry out procurement, that the successor activity for carry out procurement is inspection. So we select inspection here and then we assign. And if the next activity, which is inspection, that the successor activity is close procurement, so we select close procurement here and then we assign. So this is essentially what we have created, but it's also worthy to note that your activity can have more than one dependencies. So if an activity has more than one dependency, say for example there's another activity here, let's add one, let's say we review, let's say we have a stage review, yes, which is a final activity. So let's say for the stage review, inspection is dependent on remember that the successor activity for inspection is not just close procurement, but then also review. So we can select review here and then also assign it as a successor activity for inspection. So you can see inspection has two successor activity, which is close and then also carry out review. So once you're done with assigning successor activities, you can click on close. Okay, we're not removing this, so this is the close button. So once you click on close, you can see the relationships you've created. They all display in the time in your Gantt. Please note that if your arrows are not displaying, you can simply go to your tools bar and select relationship lines by clicking on it. So if I can decide to display or remove my relationship lines. So once this has been done, you schedule. The schedule icon is in the tools bar. This will help us in stretching the relationships we've created to show us activities on the critical path and then also the dependencies that we've created in that order. So click on the schedule button and then click on schedule in the schedule window that pops up, and then it stretches your activity and shows you the relationship that you have just created. So we have created new project, assigned durations, and then also created the relationships that exist between our project. All right, so now that we've done that, the next thing we may possibly do is to now determine the resources. In other words, resource assignments for our project. So to assign resources to our project, all we need to do is we need to first of all create the resources. So you go to your directory bar and click on resources. It brings up the resources window for you. This is what we call resource dictionary. Then you can go to the command bar and click on add. It will bring up that to display, in order to add a resource, the filter will be changed to display all resources. We are okay with that. So we click on OK. It shows us all resources and brings up the resource wizard for us. So let's say we are creating different resources now. Let's say we are creating Obalim. So Obalim is one of our resource persons. And we click on next. Obalim is a labor resource, so we leave it at labor resource. We click on next. Now we can determine how much Obalim earns per hour. Say Obalim earns, say, 1,000 per hour, and we click on next. We can add Obalim's phone number and email address here. Obalim at cielgr.com, and then add Obalim's phone number. Let's say 090370805552. Okay, so now that we have done that, we can click on next. So when we do that, it will ask us to assign roles, but we've not created roles here. Otherwise, we can simply click on assign, and if we already had roles created for this project, they would appear here. So we can click on next. and leave it at the default calendar. Click on next and keep clicking on next, and you get congratulations, and then you click on finish. So usually I like to put my resources at the very top, so I move it left and then I move it up so that it becomes conspicuous and can enable me locate them easily, especially when I want to assign. Aside from using the add button in the command bar, you can also right click here and click on add and then create another resource. I want it at the same level at which will left to Balim, so I outdent it. I enter my next resource name, which in this case is John, or rather JD, and then I enter the name of the resource person, which is John Doe. And if you notice, this is a label resource, and some of those details we saw in the wizard is here in the detail view. For example, if we go to detail, this is where we can allocate a label resource, and then also choose whatever resource that we may want to assign. Then under the units, this is where we determine exactly how much the individual is going to be earning per hour. So here we can enter that John Doe is going to be earning, say, another 1,000 per hour. So we've created two labor resources. We can also decide to create, let's say, a non-labor resource, let's say machinery. So if we right click here and click on add, let's say we have a concrete mixer. We're going to term it CM. I push it one step leftwards and then I type in concrete mixer. Okay, then this is not a labor resource. So under the resource type, I click on it and then I select a non-labor resource, because this is a non-labor resource. And say we're paying for the concrete mixer, we hired it and we're paying let's say 500 per hour. We enter that detail there. Then let's now create a material resource. So we can also right click and click on add, and then have it on the same level. So the material resource we're creating now is, let's say we're going to be using cement for the purpose of our construction. So we simply type in cement here and we choose the resource type, which is a material resource, and then we click on yes, and we go to a unit of measure. So we are going to be measuring cement in tons. Know that you can create new units of measure from enterprise, or rather from admin, and you click on select. So it shows us that the unit of measure for cement is this amount, and how much do we pay per ton? Let's say we pay 2,000 per ton. And so we've created two labor resources, one non-labor resource, and then one material resource. So we can simply go back to our activities view. So to assign resources to our activities, remember, you can simply display your resource column. If you do not know how to display your resource column, you can go back on this video, because I talked about it earlier on. So if I simply double click within the cell under the resource name column, my assign resources window appears, and then I can now choose a resource person to assign to a particular activity. Well, this is a milestone task, so we can assign a resource there. So we select the next activity. Then let's say Obalim will be responsible for the design building layout. Then we click on the assign button. But before we do that, it's also pertinent that we see what happens to our costs. Therefore, we want to display our cost column, because we had already determined how much we pay our resource persons per hour. So if we assign those resource persons to these activities, Primavera will automatically compute how much the activity will translate into based on how much you're spending or paying for resource usage. So let's see how that happens by displaying our cost column. So as usual, you right click on columns, then go to search and then select budgeted. Let's see, I think budgeted total cost. We're looking for budgeted total cost. Budgeted total cost. Okay, so that's it. So we have the budgeted total cost. So we add the budgeted total cost and let it appear after our resources. So we click on OK. So if I assign a resource, say Obalim, to this activity now, I click on assign. You will notice that as Obalim appears, at the same time, our budgeted total cost displays that for the cost of this activity, The budgeted total cost is about 80,000 naira. Then under the design building, I assigned this to John Doe. The budgeted total cost also appears. So this is one way you can actually come up with the costing for your Primavera P6. There are also other ways you can do this. If you're doing a top-down estimate, you can also impute cost directly as against, doing bottom-up estimate, which is what we are doing at this moment. So you can assign more than one resource, either material, labor, or non-labor resource to an activity. Please know that we're just doing this for test purpose, and we probably are not, very eager about the appropriateness of the type of resource we're assigning to that activity. But I just wanted to let you know that you can assign more than one resource to an activity, and then at the same time, the cost displays as you assign your resources. So that's essentially how to create, and not just create, also assign resources to activities that you have in your Primavera P6, and also be able to determine the cost for each of those activities based on the resources that have been assigned to that very activity. So once you're done with your allocation, you close the assign resources window. You see the budget for your project. And then also, if you notice that there's also a very interesting part of our Primavera P6, which is the fact that if you look at your Gantt, you will see some activities displayed in red. So these activities that are actually showing in red are the activities on the critical path. So that's why if you look at the total float column, you will notice that the activities on the critical path all have 0 float, because more often than not, activities on the critical path will have a 0 float. In other words, you cannot delay an activity on the critical path because that will affect the project duration. But then for the activities on the non-critical path, you can see some of them have 24 days and some of them have, like 5 days float, as the case may be. So now that we have assigned resources and seen how to come up with the cost for our project, the next thing we may now look at is how to create your project report. In order to create our report, we can go to the Tools menu, then select Report Wizard. So we're going to be creating a new report. You simply click on Next. We want to see our activities report. You click on Next. So because we want to see our activities report only, these are other things you can see in addition to your activities report. You click on Next, then keep clicking on Next until you get to Run Report. So when we click on Run Report, we can see the print preview by clicking on it. So it gives us the report of our project with respect to the activities. You can see activities report and then the status of those activities. And my activities have not started yet, and that's why they are all showing not started, and not started. Now, aside from that also, I can decide to print my work or probably send it to senior management, my schedule, All I first of all need to do is I go and set up, this is the print preview. So if I print it now, this is the way it's going to look like. But then I want it to capture my Gantt as well. So I go to page setup, and then under the fit tool, I change it to 1. Under the pages wide tall, I change it to 1. And I click on apply. So if that happens, you can see when I print it, this is the way it's now going to appear. Don't forget that you can change the header for your report. Say I want to enter the header for this report. I can simply choose header and then click on modify, and then I type in Ciel Consulting, and that's the header for my report, because Ciel Consulting is the one doing this project. And then I can also change the footer and other options as the case may be. And when I click on apply and I click on OK, so this is the print preview. When I print it, you can see the header is showing. You can also see all my activities and my timelines, and all the details are showing up here. And then also notice that I have the Gantt conspicuously displayed. All right, so that's essentially how to do the report, and then also how to print using your Primavera P6. Don't forget that your network diagram is simply a click away. All you simply need to do is you click on activity network on your tools bar. This helps in displaying your network diagram and showing you activities on the critical path, and then also some activities that may not really be at the critical path. So we can go back to our Gantt chart. So this is how to create a simple plan using Primavera P6. I hope you've learned one or two things from here. If you like the video, please comment in the comment section. Subscribe to my YouTube page because we're going to be doing much videos on advanced level and then also some very technical part of using Primavera P6. But then creating this simple plan will help you to keep, to start off already using your Primavera P6, which is actually a very wonderful tool that can help you to schedule. Please, if there's any other topic you want me to address in subsequent videos, kindly add same in the comment section. You can also ask me whatever question you want in the comment section, and don't forget, I would be willing to reply to those questions. Until we see again next time, I hope you had a very good time, and then of course I hope that this very video makes sense to you. Thank you so much for watching, and do have a very wonderful experience using Primavera P6. Thank you.